All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me, Garrett?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Sorry for the delay, people. I had some, I won't go into details, but I had some technical issues. So I was trying desperately to plug stuff in the back of my computer without pulling it too far away from the wall, so that then it would unplug my whole system, and then we would be in serious trouble. Anyway, hello. Hello, Garrett. How are things in the fantastically free and fantastically brave United States of America, brother? Good?
It's the Cold War is heating up. Let's put it that way.
The Dulles are happy wherever they are.
It's pivoting to Iran, but yeah.
Yeah. Oops. Well, I guess the Dulles are happy then, wherever they are, whatever level of hell they are. I'm looking. Oh, well, it is what it is. Who knows what's on my camera? We'll just say I put Vaseline on it to hide, to take 10 years off. Because I feel, in my view, I have like this weird kind of glow, but I'll take it. I'm glowing, whatever. Let's see. Hi, everyone. This is Morbid Symptoms Podcast. It's been a few weeks since we've had one. I'm going to take off this banner because we have clearly started just a little bit behind schedule, but such as it is. I'm here with Garrett, the social populist. Garrett Ramirez. The Social Populist is the name of his publication on Substack. And he is, well, I've deputized him as the program's correspondent. What I decided, it was the True Conspiracy Theory Correspondent. And you didn't complain, so I'm guessing you're okay with that.
Conspiracy facts, as Alex Jones said. Only conspiracy facts, except I don't know if he lives up to that, but I'll try to live up to that.
All right. Well, we can only do what we can do. We may not be right, but we're not lying. All right. So I asked Garrett on, I don't know when I reached out to you. It's all a blur, but it was sometime after the JFK files were coming out, because I was thinking, okay, this has been a part of, I don't know if it's outside of America, but it's been part of our culture, this kind of mystery since I can remember, who killed JFK, and there's all the movies and Behind the Grassy Knoll and, all this stuff. And every once in a while, there's this buildup. Oh, now we're really going to find out what happened. It's like we're going to, like, the government is all knowing and powerful. And then somewhere there's just a room with like a bow on it. And it says, open this, like, here's the truth about JFK. And then you open it up and it's all there. So I wanted to ask you on to see, because I figured, okay, if anybody I know who has gone over the file release, it would probably be Garrett. And basically what we're going to discuss, or what I'm going to have him ask him about, is first of all, here's the program of events. It's kind of like a novice's guide to the CIA. I didn't want to say idiot's guide because I don't like calling people idiots until they've demonstrated their idiocy. So kind of a novice guide, kind of a nutshell history of the CIA, because I think some people have this idea that's just been around forever, like it was, from George Washington on. There has been this lovely institution. And then I'll ask you who didn't want to kill JFK, because it seems like there was a lot of, a lot of interested parties, lots of ins and outs and what have you. No. So first we're going to do that, and then we're going to get into the file, kind of springboarding off of what I think is considered fairly definitive, or the best, this according to Glenn Greenwald, journalistic cover of this book called The Devil's Chessboard. And so to come off like, but kind of using this as the springboard about what what's the story or the narrative, whatever you want to call it, what's going on. Based on what this book covered, was anything new revealed or kind of confirmation for the story that this guy demonstrated? And of course, that implies getting your take on it. And then I also want to get into, and you might touch upon this, I'm sure, throughout when you get into your intro to the CIA, themes of anti-communism and U.S. imperialism and the Kennedys, because they seem to have it out for them. But there is this debate about how on board or not the Kennedys were with kind of the status quo that was established after World War II. So on that note, you can say anything else you want to say about yourself, and then if you could please just kind of get into the kind of the novice's guide to the CIA. Dun dun dun.
Right. Well, I'll say that I'm not exactly an expert on all this, because it's almost impossible to be an expert on all this, because, well, as Joe Pesci said in the movie, the JFK movie, It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma, and there are multiple suspects, and even within all the theories, even within each coherent theory, there's often multiple suspects. There's a coalition of powerful actors who would have to take out Kennedy. So that's one caveat I want to put on this. I'm looking to write something about this.
Okay. So we'll just because this is how careful we are. We're not like these crazy people on the other sites. Like, all will be revealed. Garrett's is trying to say that this is the best of his knowledge and analysis. Yeah. But I mean, that goes without saying. So on that, can you kind of just give us like a quick, like the CIA, boom. Where did this lovely institution come from?
Yeah, the CIA is it's less than 70 years old. It's a product of the Cold War national security reorganization, the National Security Act of 1947, which created the Pentagon as we know it, because before Pentagon was an organization.
Oh, you're going in and out. Can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
Garrett, you're going in and out. Uh-oh.
The department.
Hold on. You're frozen. You're frozen, Garrett. Uh-oh.
Okay, how's that?
Comes. Okay, that's good. Now you're back. The last thing I heard was 1947.
Yeah, there was the big old National Security Act of 1947 that it established the CIA. It established the Pentagon as we know it. The Pentagon used to be a smaller organization known as the Department of War, very straightforwardly. In 1947, it was reorganized as the Department of Defense. Nice Orwellian change there. And much more secrecy involved, and probably less congressional oversight as well. Now, the CIA had a predecessor organization called the OSS, which was the Office of Strategic Services. That had been created in 1941 or 1942 after Pearl Harbor for World War II. And so the founders of the CIA could be said to be veterans of the OSS, like Allen Dulles, like Cord Meyer, Richard Helms, all these guys who are major CIA officers in the early years, who are all connected to the Kennedy assassination in some way.
What was the pitch? So when it went from the OSS to the CIA, what was the pitch when they pitched it to Eisenhower? Yeah, and said, "Look, we really need this. This is a good idea." Was it? Because when I looked it up today, it's quite straightforward what they think they are, or what they say they are, Central Intelligence Agency. And I don't know if this is the mission from day one, but on the website now it says our mission is straightforward. Well, that's nice. It's straightforward but critical. Leverage the power of information to keep our nation safe. We are the nation's first line of defense. And this is fantastic, people. I love they're kind of funny. We accomplish what others cannot accomplish and go where others cannot go. Well, I mean, that's kind of honest, isn't it?
Yeah. That's
It's kind of like the law doesn't apply to us.
yeah. That's very sorry not sorry kind of statement from the CIA.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. So the OSS was around since Pearl Harbor, and then the CIA came part of 1947, and the pitch was
it was actually Truman,
the Library of Information. Okay, yeah.
It was this was actually under Truman. Truman dissolved the OSS when World War II came to an end, and so there was 2 years between the dissolution of the OSS and the creation of the CIA. It wasn't until you had the Red Scare, basically, the post-World War II Red Scare, that you had a justification for there being a CIA. There wouldn't normally be a peacetime massive intelligence apparatus. So it's kind of like, the whole premise comes from the Cold War and the international communist conspiracy.
And I want to stop you there for a second to get your take on this, because I haven't read the entirety of the Devil's Chessboard. I've skimmed it. I did watch an interview of his with Glenn Greenwald, and he puts a lot of emphasis, like these two guys are the main characters, or I guess villains, if you want, and the story that he wants to tell about the CIA. That basically it was Dulles' baby. I don't know which Dulles, there's two, but he creates these brothers, both of them. So they were, correct me if I'm wrong, these guys,
although only one of them was in CIA technically, but
okay.
Allen was the one who was the CIA chief. John Foster Dulles was Secretary of State in the 1950s under Eisenhower.
Okay, and before that, they had like a Wall Street investment firm or something.
Yes, Harriman Brothers.
Yeah. Okay. And then apparently they must have been like bigwigs in the Democratic Party to be able to get put in first. One of them's at the Secretary of State, and then the other Dulles gets to put the head of the. He was the first head of the CIA. Yeah, is that true?
No, he wasn't. He
wasn't. Sorry. Go ahead.
He was the second and longest serving one.
Okay.
It's been argued the prime mover in getting it created.
And are you're familiar with the Devil's Chessboard? I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Because if I remember correctly, the story I'll just quickly say his story, then you can fill in, then you can flesh it out to give to if you want to shade in things that he doesn't shade in or whatever it is that he makes it seem like these two guys were central. And I don't know if it was just because for American imperialist reasons or if they were ideologically just like really hated the Soviet Union. But he made it seem like from the very beginning of the CIA, its main prerogative was kind of like, he even called it a extermination approach to communism and the USSR. So that as kind of like was baked in the cake of the CIA. And then when Kennedy
brothers were active in the Russian Civil War, which wasn't exactly a civil war because there were a dozen foreign armies, including the U.S. Army, involved in trying to suppress the Russian Revolution.
Okay, can you say a bit more about that? In the year was that the Bolshevik Revolution?
Yeah, back
the Bolshevik Revolution. Okay, so these guys were and how were the Dulles brothers involved in that?
They were part of Army intelligence, I don't know. They were involved in all kinds of skullduggery. There's a lot of.
I'm assuming they weren't on the side of the Bolsheviks. They weren't on the side of the Bolsheviks, were they?
They're definitely not on the.
I mean,
Although Woodrow Wilson, who was president at that time, did kind of make a show of initially not interfering in Russian affairs, not taking sides in the Civil War, but the evidence is pretty clear from the documentation that came out later that he was, you know, all the Western intel agencies are actually there's some evidence that they were involved in the attempted assassination of Lenin in 1918. But initially, when the troops came in, they were supposed to be, I don't know, there was some sort of humanitarian mission, and there was various missions that were related to World War I at the time, and Russia had, you know, withdrawn from World War I unexpectedly. And it was a U.S. Western ally under the Tsar. So there's all this rigmarole about I don't know, bringing stability to this sort of power vacuum that occurs in Eastern Europe. As you know, all the German government's collapsing and the Russian government collapses and is replaced with the Bolsheviks and so on and so forth. But basically, there was a secret war against the Bolsheviks, as one of my favorite books, America's Secret War Against Bolshevism by David S. Fogelsong.
Okay, well, no, we have to hold it up. So you have to give it. You have to give your camera a moment to see it. Yeah, hold it up again, Garrett.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit too quick for me. Oh. Okay, now we'll see. I'll tell you when it. Okay, so now you have it. All right, so it takes a moment to process. Thank you. That's a Garrett. That's a Garrett Ramirez recommendation, people.
But basically, there kind of was a proto Cold War, you know, right after the Russian Revolution, where the Dulleses and the you know, these pre-CIA World War I era intelligence operations tried to suppress the Russian Revolution. And
were they in the military then? I'm sorry, were the Dulles in the military, or were they just kind of like Blackwater, or what is that thing? Is it Blackwater? Yeah. Or, I mean, I was trying to figure out, because they were really rich. Came from a rich family, yeah. And then they decided to go into the army and fight communists.
Dulles was in the Near East Division of the Department of State. And I should correct myself from earlier and clarify that his law firm on Wall Street was Sullivan and Cromwell, not Harriman, as I said before.
Okay.
And he became a director of the Council of Foreign Relations in the 1920s. So a big time State Department guy and a liaison between the federal government and the big banking world.
Okay. All right. And so they all the way from 1917 then, and the CIA was formed in 1947. So that's 30 years that they have been involved in international information collection, shall we say?
Yes. And
they were going where other people can't do discrete operations. Discrete operations, yes. All right. Okay. So, and he also, I guess I should say in general, in general, before let's get, I can't talk, because I'm using the Devil's Chessboard, and also an interview or two that I saw from the author Talbot. I want to say his name is David Talbot. As this kind of a springboard to gauge what, if any, interesting information has come to light since then. Now, do you have any major reservations about that text?
No, I don't. I find it
okay.
I find it very compelling.
Good, because I didn't want. I thought about. I should have asked you that earlier. If we came on, you're like, well, that's a stinker. Why are you talking about that? And I'm like, well, the old man on TV, when he was talking about, he seemed so genuine. I was like, I believe you. You know? And it was a good story. I was like, because usually I try to, I mean, this kind of big men and occasionally big women of history is a bit Hollywood. But I was thinking, well, maybe these two dudes, you know, maybe the Dulleses really were pivotal. He was saying there's no more important individuals in terms of understanding American post-World War II foreign policy, in particular, and its posture towards the Soviet Union in the Cold War than these two dudes. And
Yeah,
you
I
would
would agree with that.
You would agree with that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And
All
they
right.
they're representative of their class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's another thing I wanted to ask before we get into the nitty gritty. A couple of other things, just about the kind of the milieu that the CIA. Again, I couldn't believe that was actually on their website. Let me find it again. I thought this is so awesome. So again, if you go to the CIA, and you'll go here, and it says literally, we accomplish what others cannot accomplish and go where others cannot go, which is basically saying that they break the law. Yeah. That's funny. I mean, you could. I mean, no. I mean, not necessarily. But if I wanted to euphemistically describe my unlawful or clandestine activity, I go, that would be a good way of doing it. Yeah. Anyway, I just thought it was great. So
yeah. I mean, I don't think the Russian intelligence service would be bold enough to describe themselves that way, or the Chinese intelligence service.
And so again, going from and I think he's since passed away. That's too bad. But you know, he lived a good life. This guy, not this guy. He's a devil person. But the guy who fuck you, Dulles. Sorry. Anyway, now I forgot what I was gonna say. Okay, yeah. So, he also said that Eisenhower basically outsourced foreign policy, and it was kind of like, okay, I trust you guys. You just do your thing. And then later on, at the end of his presidency, gave that speech saying, "Hey, watch out for this military-industrial complex that I just totally let happen." Which is that did they have? I mean, and here's what I wanted to ask, because we hear about the quote-unquote deep state. Okay, this clearly would be that, because they go where others can't and do what needs to be done. I don't know. And then of course, being Marxist, we will use, especially with people who are anti-imperialist, the ruling class. And he also would use that language of the Dulleses and who. So if the CIA doesn't serve the president, if the president is supposed to serve the CIA almost, then who? And if you want to say like, okay, well, who did this guy have to answer to? For example, the Dulleses, this guy here. What kind of people, or what kind of people would he have to have answered to? You know, and again, I don't know, maybe it's just smoke-filled rooms, or maybe it's just kind of like the C.S. Mills power elite. You just kind of, you know, going on in that milieu, you have shared interests. But if it's not the president who was calling the shots or pulling or overseeing the CIA, especially, you know, probably now, but when this guy's in charge, who would be then? Who would be the kind of person that could say, "Hey, Dulles," who could call him on the phone and be like, "Dude, yo, do you have any ideas besides just abstractions like, you know, Wall Street, weapons manufacturers?" I mean, yeah.
Well, supposedly he respected the chain of command where it asserted itself. As you said, Eisenhower he trusted Dulles, and he didn't want to know the details of what the CIA did, so that he wouldn't have to be he wouldn't have the burden of having to lie about not knowing about their
plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability.
So isn't that kind of like the mafia thing, like where the Don gives a rule, like lets it be known what they want, but not like the details? It does
sound a lot like that.
I guess that makes sense.
But
well, I guess it makes sense.
There's also reports that. Sorry. There's also reports that you know, he would allow himself to be overruled by his John Foster Dulles, who was Secretary of State at the time. Of course, that was his big brother. That was his older brother, John Foster Dulles. So I don't know if you call it
patriarchy,
a non-blood relation. to overrule him, but apparently he didn't like it when Kennedy overruled him.
Yeah, we'll get there. Okay. So again, and is it fair to say that because we've heard for a long time that the CIA, of course, is not a friend of the left, and both inside the government, inside the United States, but of course outside of it was quite interested in the man who wrote that book would say extermination policy. It wasn't just they wanted to keep the Soviet Union in check; they wanted it gone. Was kind of was the pitch that he got, which does make sense with how savage they were with any country who they thought was leaning towards that direction, be it Vietnam or Korea or whatever. And so do you think that's a fair statement, that if the Soviet Union, if there hadn't been a Soviet Union after World War II or a communist Soviet Union, would there have been a CIA, do you think?
Probably not. Not that specific, massive standing organization. No. I mean, as I said, it was a product of the Red Scare. It was a product of the perception that all communists in the world were like directly controlled by the Soviet Union. And so there was an international communist conspiracy. There was an evil empire and all of this.
I thought the Red Scare was more FBI. Nationally was an FBI project, yeah? And that, of course, McCarthy.
Right. But I'm talking about the sort of atmosphere that was created by the FBI and by the State Department in the late 40s. From the time when supposedly there was an Iron Curtain falling over Eastern Europe, as Winston Churchill put it in a speech that he gave in the United States with Harry Truman next to him. That was the atmosphere that the CIA was created in, and the justification for their existence.
And before we get to
and then we lost China,
we lost China
to the Soviets.
Yeah, they got Taiwan, baby, kind of.
Right. But the victory of the communists in 1949 in the Chinese Civil War. That was going on while the CIA was formed in 1947, and it already looked like the Mao was going to win. So yeah, it's all tied to that perception of an international communist empire sweeping over the world in the late 40s.
And hence you need a centralized intelligence gathering agency to keep tabs on what's going on everywhere that we're interested in, because we don't want them going the wrong way. We don't want that domino to fall. Or maybe they do, because then you get to sell lots of weapons. I don't know. Anyway, win-win, I guess, if you're it's a win if the country doesn't go away, go a direction that the Dulleses and the whatever you want to call it, the deep state, the doesn't want. And if they do, then it's another win, because then you just get to sell lots of weapons and whatnot. And, one hand shakes the other. I don't know. But there's that. That makes sense then also, that it wasn't just that these guys had a hard on ideologically, that they were reading the devil on the chessboard. Yeah. Now I understand why he called his book that, and thinking, we gotta get our feelers out, know what's going on in these places. And on that note, also I wanted to bring up, before we get into the JFK phase and why the CIA, Dulles' CIA, might not have been so happy with him. This guy comes up a lot, and he's only one of several Nazis. And before I get to this guy and ask you about why there was such a market for Nazis after World War II, I mean, not low level. I think like, kind of mid to upper level. I'll ask you that. But there was quite a market for Nazis after World War II. And because like I just Googled Nazis post-World War II intelligence agencies, and you get so many stories of these. So this is like the New York Times. This was in 2014. In Cold War, U.S. spy agencies used 1,000 Nazis. That's a precise number. Not 999, and not more than 1,000, because that would have been too many. And then you have another thing from George Washington University, the CIA and Nazi war criminals, Operation Paperclip, Nazis and the Axis collaboration, U.S. and Nazis as Cold War spy. U.S. used Nazis as Cold War spies, the CIA's dark history of employing former Nazis, and then on and on and on. And one of the persons that came up a lot in terms of the infancy, if you will, of the CIA, maybe it's overseas operations, because at first I thought, because I don't think about these things that much, this topic, I thought, well, what's with all the Nazis? Because is it because they, they're good at doing what other people don't typically do? And then it occurred to me, if you wanted to start the CIA, and the CIA's focus was in gathering intelligence around the world to keep tabs on, for the purpose of confronting the communist spread and defeating it whenever possible, that you would want these Nazis who were involved in intelligence during World War II, who probably were keeping pretty good tabs on the Russians. Or is it more than that?
Yeah, that about sums it up. They were the most committed anti-Soviet fighters, to put it mildly, and part of that fight was collecting intelligence on them. I mean, some of it may have come from torture confessions, not entirely reliable.
Well, they were Nazis.
Yeah.
The original enhanced interrogators. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, probably not the original, but
But
and this guy, Reinhard. Go ahead.
That's definitely the official explanation from the CIA, is like, well, they had the most information about the Soviets, and they bargained. They bargained surrendering that information in exchange for their freedom.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, or also for like the nuclear program, or if they whatever. But this guy, this is Hitler's spy master. I don't know if that's true, if it just is a nice name for a book, the Reinhard Gehlen. And I want to say, like, so
no, he was
Gehlen's journey from not. Go ahead.
No, he was the top. He was the top guy in German intelligence.
Okay. And so then, what can you tell us a bit about what you know about his trajectory after World War II?
Well, there's a whole CIA operation. Well, it's not a CIA operation. It's an OSS operation called Operation Paperclip. This is why I sort of clarifying my expertise, because all this stuff goes in so many multiple directions. You can write volumes on each separate aspect of it, but.
We're trying to
if you want the CIA in terms of
what will be relevant when we get to the Kennedys,
But if you want the CIA's direct connection to Gehlen, just look up Operation Paperclip, and also, what is the book? There's a book by a historian named Christopher Simpson about this.
Yeah, I just picked these two from the internet because the pictures were good. I don't know. I haven't read either of these books. So they could be.
I said they're both probably legit, because this is all very well documented. It took decades for it to come out, but it's not really in the realm of conspiracy theory anymore. It's in the realm of conspiracy.
Oh no.
That they directly rescued this guy from the Nuremberg trials and hid him, made him part of NATO and the West German government.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you, because I was trying to think that not only did they pluck him, keep him from being tried in the Nuremberg trials, because if he was the head spy dude, spy master, then they hit him, and then he ended up being an official. He ended up being in German intelligence, West German intelligence. Isn't that true?
Yes. Yes. And
everyone was cool with that.
And he was very chummy with Alan Dulles, and Alan Dulles used to invite him over to his house if you want a direct connection, direct Dulles connection.
Yeah.
But Dulles
okay, so
also,
the
going back to the OSS, Dulles, he arguably helped start the Cold War when he. Arguably, this whole operation of sort of making secret deals with the Nazi, with high-level Nazis, like high-level Nazi war criminals, and sheltering them from the Nuremberg trial, and recruiting them as operatives, arguably in the while World War II is still going on, is arguably a contributing factor to the estrangement between the U.S. and Soviet governments who had been allies in World War II. But Dulles, he smuggled this German SS general, Karl Wolff, who was a major war criminal involved in the Holocaust, and he was doing the German occupation of northern Italy in 1945. And basically, Dulles, he negotiated a separate peace with him to get the U.S. and the British into Italy first, without the Russians knowing, to make sure that the Russians couldn't get into Italy, because Italy was about to fall to the resistance, which was led by communists. And this was a violation of the deal that the Allies had made for unconditional surrender, right? There weren't supposed to be conditions like, well, you protect me from war crimes trials and take care of me if I do X, Y, Z for you. And unconditional surrender was supposed to be really serious. Like, the reason we were supposed to have dropped the A-bomb on Japan is because of unconditional surrender. We wouldn't negotiate, with the Japanese. It's just yes or no, you're surrendering or not. So that was a dirty deal against the communists that may have helped set off the Cold War, that Dulles did during World War II with the Nazis.
Okay, so okay, and just to recap, so in part of and we don't, and do we have? Let's see, and you might have said this already, and if you did, I apologize for asking it. What's the? Is it just that he used these guys because it was kind of pragmatic? Like, okay, yeah, there's some nasty guys, but they know where the bodies are buried. They have this intelligence network already, and they've been keen on gathering intelligence on the Russians for quite some time. Or is he also kind of a Nazi? the Dulles, did his ideology kind of square with that?
Well, from the liberal point of view, no, because because some of his best friends were Jewish. If you want to look at it that way, or because I mean,
well, Zionists are also fairly Nazi. Or not Zionists can be Nazis. So I just mean like Nazi as in a general term, leaving their preferred victims.
Well, he wasn't trying to
basically.
As I said, through the liberal lens, he wasn't trying to do a racial purge, and he wasn't trying to do a purge of everyone on the left the way that Nazis would do. But I guess through the Marxist lens, his commitment to anti-communism was such that he would support and arguably build up fascist forces in order to crush any sign of a powerful communist movement in the country.
Yeah. So similar to, like, say, helping establish an entity like ISIS.
Yes.
Even though technically we're not hip on that, but you got to use what's there. Not that
Well,
ISIS
yeah.
is funny.
Well, there's a CIA relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood and obviously Al Qaeda in the 80s against the Soviets in Afghanistan.
So basically, a long established process, and I don't know if they invented that; they just got better at it with the technology of using, let's say, untoward or unsavory groups or actors in order to destabilize the regime that was going in a direction they didn't like.
Yeah. And I should say not even necessarily communist, but simply anti-imperialist. I think you used the phrase before about, the falling dominoes and would they allow a domino to fall if it justified profiting off war? I think it's more like, the definition of what a falling domino is, there's more than one definition. And often the definition they worked under was simply, being independent of the U.S. Western imperial system of a formerly colonized country fully decolonizing itself from foreign economic interests and sort of asserting sovereignty over its own economic policy and the foreign investors who had been exploiting the country. So even a sort of, national, a nationalist social democracy that was not Marxist would be cracked down on by the CIA.
Yeah, and you might find okay, and so so let's see would Mearsheimer, John Mearsheimer, just label Dulles a realist, or is it because I'm trying to think how ideological this was he like, because there's some people who are like anti-communist, they like literally think that communism is the devil or like the worst thing ever, and it has to be, I don't know, like not John Lindsay. What's that guy's name? That Lindsay dude.
James Lindsay.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
James.
Or at least that's his shtick. But he legit. I think he legit.
A Gnostic heresy is his term.
Yeah, I think he believes all the stuff that I think he's in the grips of the fantasy. He gets off.
Well, he's apparently funded by a big evangelical guy now.
Oh, shocking. So was there? So is there that kind of aspect to the Dulleses and the guys who were setting up the CIA apparatus and framing this kind of Cold War posture that we're still kind of in the in the maybe the decline of today, or was it just really pragmatic? Like, look, we're the cock on the walk. We should capitalize on what we are going after, and just kind of wanting to just basically like make sure that we have dominance in as many places as possible. And they just saw that the Soviet Union was the only other model on offer, or probably more, or was it like a combo?
I'll say it was a combo. And of course, famously, NATO was not dissolved after the end of the Soviet Union and the end of the Warsaw Pact, which was its counterpart in the East, and the CIA wasn't either. And it's whether or not communism exists, empire exists, and the founder of the OSS was a guy named Bill Donovan. Wild Bill Donovan, they called him, but he actually came out of British intelligence. So there's a great deal of mentoring of the early CIA by the operatives and the officials of the British Empire.
Which is kind of funny, is it not? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but isn't that kind of it? Because they kind of like, if their intelligence was so good, then why did they lose their empire? I mean. It's like even back then, these fuckers, even back then, they failed up. They always fail up, Garrett. Who can we have help us set up our empire? I know, the ones whose empire is ended. And
Well,
the Nazis who were just defeated. They know how to do it.
That's a good point, but that's why they were leaning on the Germans too. They thought between the two of the failed empires, there must be something they could use.
Well, it's also kind of funny that Germany loses 2 world wars, but let's go with these guys. They know how to. Although it's, I mean, in terms of the wealth and power of the U.S. as a whole, not the majority of the people. I mean, it's it has worked out for a particular group of people. Okay.
You could argue that they didn't really lose the empire. It just kind of merged with the U.S.
Oh, that's right. It's subbladed. It's like a Borg. It's subbladed. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. And okay. So do you need to take a little break before we get into the Kennedy stuff, or should we just keep going?
No, we can keep going.
Okay. So let's see. So again, to use the Devil's Chessboard as our baseline here. Here's a picture of JFK and looking at RFK. And when I saw this picture, I was like, God, his son, which makes sense, it's his son, but his son does really look a lot like him. Anyway, RFK Jr. So who and why? So according to, again, before and after this latest, the latest big reveal or a dump of files a couple of weeks ago, that the Talbot was basically saying that Dulles got pissed at, that the Kennedys, and I'm assuming both of them because they were tight, but he was the president, was not going along enough or with the policy that had been established with great effort by the Dulleses and their network, their pentablet, if you will, their cabal, their Council of 13 or whatever that is, that he wasn't moving away from it. That maybe even Talbot would say that he didn't want to have this aggressive posture with the USSR or with Cuba, and that since he figured, and then when Dulles, I guess, probably wasn't doing him any favors, he fired him. Yeah, and that apparently really pissed Dulles off. Like, who the fuck is this guy? Who's this president think he is? Yeah, firing me. And all those who were cool with all the powers that be, that were happy with the direction that the U.S. security state, so I'll just say U.S. imperialism, had taken since World War II. All of these people would have had an axe to grind with the president if in fact it's true that he was going in a different direction. So I guess the first question is, would you agree? Because this is a matter of debate, to what degree the Kennedys were out of step with what had happened the previous 15 years before he was elected, 14, 15 years.
I would say there's a lot of truth in that. I think there are some pro-Kennedy people who can exaggerate this a bit, but there are also anti-Kennedy people who exaggerate. I would say that the Kennedys were kind of an evolving phenomenon. I guess you could say maybe because they were a bit younger than the other people in the establishment. They were a little bit outside because they were Irish Catholic. They very much came out of it. They had been supporters of even Joe McCarthy in the 50s. But I think the sort of crisis of imperialism that took place in the 1960s sort of kind of slapped them upside the head and made them reconsider some of the old agendas. There's a lot of evidence on both sides, Talbot has a lot of good evidence on his side, and
no, he even mentioned that and again, Glenn Greenwald seems like of course he was friends with Talbot, and Talbot gave him his first, I think, journalist job at Salon when he went from being a lawyer to being a journalist. Although I think that, not that Glenn is, perfect, but he mentioned in their interview that it's like, because he asked Talbot specifically, because I guess Chomsky, for example, for one person on the left, Noam Chomsky, has always kind of dismissed this notion that the CIA, that Dulles, that they would have wanted to take Kennedy out, because he was like, well, Kennedy wasn't, his policy wasn't that different. And so why that didn't make sense to him. And Talbot and others want to push back at that. And he was saying that, there was, if you look at the record of what's available, it was clear that he was, of course, to what he looked at, that he was interested in doing some détente with Castro, with Khrushchev, with other people, that he wasn't very hip on sending people to kill and be killed as much as, I guess, those before him were, and those after. So, and you're saying that you think there's a strong case for that.
Well, again, I would say that he evolved on that. Early on, he was definitely open to everything, including obviously the Bay of Pigs invasion of 1961 of the CIA paramilitaries, CIA trained paramilitaries against Cuba to overthrow Castro. Yeah. And JFK did authorize that. He didn't go all in with it, but he did authorize it. And he did initially authorize assassination attempts against Castro. But the really, the period you really have to look at is the period after the Cuban Missile Crisis, where that's the blowback from the Bay of Pigs invasion. And in response to the Bay of Pigs invasion, Castro calls in the Soviets to put in missiles in Cuba, as insurance that he'll never get invaded again by the U.S. or their proxies.
How irrational. Anyway, sorry. You should have given up. You should have totally disarmed. That's what you should do, is just disarm. And then the U.S. will leave you alone.
And that leads to the 13-day standoff of potential nuclear war that just totally scarred the world, and it changed a lot of people's perspective on the Cold War, and there's evidence that it changed Kennedy's perspective on the Cold War, where he believed that we couldn't go on like this without destroying civilization. So he after the Cuban Missile Crisis, he made kind of an anti-war speech at the American University. That's quite famous. Now, I don't know if you can take him at his word on everything, and he also said some very anti-communist things after the Cuban Missile Crisis as well. But he privately, according to testimony of his confidants, which is not necessarily proof all by itself, because they were his friends.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And post-mortem, they were trying to
probably a lot of pillow talk. If
yes, and also and
maybe he was a talker. I don't know. He was talked in his sleep. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the unpopularity of the Vietnam War, which extends to the rest of the Cold War by the end of the 60s, would make people want to cast Kennedy in the most positive light. But I don't know. There's so many testimonies of this kind. It's hard to completely dismiss them. And Kennedy most definitely
Well, he was open to it. It seems like obviously he was making people nervous about what he might do. He might take his power. He might take it too seriously that he was the president and could do these things.
Right. And he most definitely changed his attitude towards the CIA. Like it is documented in all of these, White House National Security Council memorandums that he wanted to reorganize the CIA so it had less independence. That he, unlike Eisenhower, did want to know exactly what was going on. He wanted the Pentagon to vet any military operation that the CIA was doing, or preparations for a CIA paramilitary operation, because the CIA stuff wasn't 100% secret, like if it was on a large scale, but they would only let the other agencies know kind of at the last minute, at which point it was almost too late to turn back. So Kennedy in 1963 most definitely did talk about make concrete propositions, not just talk about, but make concrete moves to reduce the autonomy of the CIA, which pissed off a lot of people at the CIA, giving them a motive to kill him right there. And so that would be.
Can I stop you for a second? Isn't it kind of batshit crazy? So you have, at least the way the system's supposed to work. So you have the president in the States, and the president's also the commander in chief of the military. And of course, he or she gets to appoint the executives, so the top couple officials at each of the agencies that are supposed to serve at his pleasure and whatever. And then you have the CIA, who apparently is doing a lot of things on their own that could obviously be at cross purposes to what, let's say, like the State Department was doing, or what to the president's agenda. Why would you set that up like that? Or was that just kind of in the gray area, came an informal practice?
Well, I guess you would set it up again because it's a mafia, operation where there's going to be a lot of dirty deeds, but the president wants to look clean, and the other agencies want to look innocent when those things eventually get discovered.
And it never occurred to them that they could become a target of that same mafia institution.
Apparently not. I mean.
Okay. I know you are rabid dog. Yeah.
Eisenhower probably deserves the most blame for unleashing the CIA, but I guess he figured it was the next guy's problem.
Well, then he does that.
That he would always agree with the CIA's agenda, and there'd be no reason for there to be enmity between them.
But then why? Is that interesting? If you just felt guilty, or you just wanted to leave on a bang and have like a really cool speech? It's like, well, you did that, dude.
Yeah,
or you played a big role in it. Well, watch out for that thing I created. It's kind of a monster. Got it as a friend.
Well, it's all about PR. I mean, there's a quote. I don't know if it was from Caesar or someone else from like the Roman Republic, saying like when the leaders speak of peace, believe that they're preparing for war. Like a lot of these people are just like sociopaths, and rhetoric is just a weapon for them. And it was just a matter of American soft power to look like you want to be the peacemaker. The USSR, were very much behind the peace movement and nuclear disarmament in the 1950s, and they were presenting themselves as the movers, the advocates of peace, while the U.S. were the warmongers. So it's in the interest of the U.S. empire to present themselves as being pro-peace, whether they
hence
are
USAID.
USAID, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Okay. So just to sum up, there's quite a bit of evidence, testimony, and documentary evidence that Kennedy was going in a different direction, or was making overtures or saying things that were that started to rattle the establishment, in particular the CIA and the yeah, well, I'll just say deep state.
and also
But
getting out of Vietnam.
okay, well, yeah, but that's part and parcel of it, isn't it? I mean, that's all the same thing. Like he wasn't this kind of, if it's true, if it's fair enough to say that the CIA under Dulles, and he was the CIA director for what, like 12 years or something? I don't know. Long time. Right. And so he was there before Kennedy came in, and he's been a critical. He's been a company man, let's say, since 1917 or even before. And this guy comes in and is not acting with the program. So he's starting to be less aggressive with the USSR. He's talking about a détente after the Bay of Pigs thing, or the missile crisis with Castro. He's not giving any indication that he has a desire to stay in Vietnam, let alone intensify it. So we have that. Now, Israel, of course, is another actor that people want to say is involved, not just because Jack Ruby was Jewish, whatnot. So where does that come in? What was his posture on Israel? The official
JFK?
and unofficial, Yeah, JFK.
It was not very enthusiastic. So far as I can tell, there's not any big revelations about the Kennedy Israel relationship in the new documents, but there are older documents that have come out in recent years showing that he wanted to discourage them from obtaining nuclear weapons, and that David Ben-Gurion, who was the first prime minister of Israel, may have resigned. May have resigned so that he could go behind the scenes and start working on a nuclear program behind Kennedy's back. There's some evidence for that, and they had that disagreement shortly before the assassination. So that is suspicious. That definitely gives Israel a motive.
Okay.
So I don't know if his attitude towards Israel was any more negative than Eisenhower's, because Eisenhower wasn't particularly close with the Israelis either. No one was really close with the Israelis until Lyndon Johnson. That notorious USS Liberty attack, with the U.S. Navy ship and U.S. Navy troops were murdered by the Israeli military in what apparently was an attempt at a false flag attack during the 1967 war with the Egyptians and the other Arab countries. That took place with Lyndon Johnson's approval. So the Israelis definitely got a good deal out of the assassination.
Okay, so here's basically this everything we've been talking about is kind of because I haven't looked at any of the new stuff, because I was thinking this seems really convenient because there's like drama in Trump land. Oh, I'm going to release the files, and I was like, and I have this like I get caught up in it too, like the truth is in the files, and then I remind myself,
to do this before the election.
Yeah, but again, this idea, it's this fantasy that somehow, again, this idea that the truth is in the files, that there's every mystery that involves the U.S. government, directly or tangentially, that somewhere in some file someplace is the truth. Yeah. and I think but what one final thing before we get on to so it's clear there wasn't any revelations, but it doesn't mean there wasn't anything interesting or confirmation in there. But I want to say that given, go ahead. I wanted to ask you one more thing about Dulles, though, or make one more comment about Dulles, if I may, before we go on to the files.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Is that and I didn't realize this. I knew that there was friction between Dulles and Kennedy, but it's quite clear that Dulles did not like Kennedy at all. Was pissed that he basically fired him, but we hear about the Warren Commission, and the person that was in charge of that, wait for it, was Dulles. So the CIA puts Dulles in charge of the Warren Commission that's in charge of investigating the Kennedy assassination. Lyndon Johnson does this.
Yeah.
And it's not just, and so it's like, it's basically like, yeah, I mean, oh, you investigate yourself, basically. So what the frick was that about? And why didn't anybody say anything? Nobody, why didn't any of the press say anything? Like, this seems weird.
Yeah. Well,
because of the Red Scare. I mean, why?
I mean, obviously, all of our conspiracy buffs will know that there was a thing called Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA.
Okay, but yeah, don't assume that
in the files.
I have a highbrow audience, Garrett, and I can't assume that they know all the ins and outs of the dark web or whatever. So, paperclip I'm familiar with. But can you just give us like a brief intro into Operation Mockingbird?
Well, Project Mockingbird was the operation to basically infiltrate all of the major media organizations in the U.S. with CIA agents.
Okay. And hence Mockingbird.
Yes.
Not talking heads.
Or as they sometimes called it informally within the agency, part of the mighty Wurlitzer. A Wurlitzer was is kind of predecessor to the jukebox, where it was it was a kind of pre-recorded organ music. Mm-hmm. So
everybody's singing the same tune.
Everybody's singing the same tune, programmed from Langley, Virginia.
You know what they could call that now, Garrett? You know what they should call that now? The Rachel Maddow.
She's definitely
allegedly. Okay. So yeah, so that makes sense, because I was thinking, like, I could see, like, and I'm thinking, like, why wasn't that ever a big issue? I mean, because even then, like, people were, I mean, I don't know, but everyone who was alive back then who was asked somebody, like, if I asked my parents, where were you when Kennedy was assassinated, they can still tell you. So people were captivated by that, were affected by it. There was only like 3 television programs, and it wasn't like it was the crazy media landscape that we have today. But even then, nobody thought, like, that's an interesting choice.
No, I mean,
blackmail files and everybody, or
and it even extended into, like, say The Nation magazine, like, or it seemed to, because, like, there was
paragon of virtue. Yeah,
they had an investigative reporter, a really good investigative reporter named Fred J. Cook, who wanted to publish extended critiques of the Warren Report, and he was shot down by his editors. He managed to put a little something here and there over the years, but not the exposés that he wanted to. So it wasn't until there was, like, this sort of weird independent sort of renegade Catholic magazine called Ramparts in the late 60s.
You don't hear that very often, renegade Catholic. But cool,
yeah. I don't know. There's like this Catholic magazine that got taken over by these liberals and sort of anti-Vietnam War activists,
liberation theorist type Catholics.
Yeah, and they started doing big exposés on the CIA. They actually did not do much on the Kennedy assassination, but they helped expose things like Project Mockingbird and Paperclip and MK Ultra. And those exposés led to the Seymour Hersh eventually doing them in the New York Times, and then that led to the congressional investigations that released the first big round of files on covert operations.
Okay, so moving on that, based on what you've seen, so this is like all we could have said all of this before the latest big release of JFK related files. Have you come across anything of interest, or that you find interesting, or that kind of shades in, some of the empty spots on the in the picture, or was it just a lot of a nothing burger in your opinion?
Not so far. There's no sort of like game-changing documents. For people who are interested in the Israeli connection, they were emphasizing that there's some more documents in there about this guy named James Jesus Angleton, a long-serving
James Jesus Angleton. Okay.
Yeah.
Christians, I understand.
Or James Jesus Angleton. I don't know. He was part Spanish. He and he was a guy who had who's I think an official liaison with Israel, and he was a very peculiar man. I mean, he was involved in lots of things, but he was definitely very, very close with Israel, and he was had connections to Lee Harvey Oswald. There's with Oswald, there's this whole scandal where the CIA through the 60s denied having done any deep surveillance on him. And then in the congressional investigation in the 70s, it came out that they had done all kinds of surveillance on him.
And why was that? Why was he of interest to them?
Well, most obviously because he had defected to the Soviet Union in 1960 for 2 years.
Okay.
And he had come back married to a Russian woman who was the daughter of a KGB officer. or KGB,
okay, hold on. Okay, let's get this straight.
Official.
So let's get this straight. So Lee Harvey Oswald, and what was he doing before he went to the USSR? He was a Marine?
He was a Marine who had connections to intelligence.
Okay, so he was and I know that because so when you go into the Marines, people who don't know, when you go, at least I'm assuming that's how it is everywhere. The Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Marines, they have like the guys from the front lines fighting. They also have their intelligence dudes, or ladies, but it was dudes then. So he was a Marine, and he was in the intelligence officer. But in 1960,
an intelligence officer, but there's some intriguing connection.
Okay, well, yeah. So in 1960, you said.
I believe so.
Okay, so he goes over to the USSR and he defects and says, "Hey, I'm down with Khrushchev," or what did he just like?
Basically,
it wasn't. Didn't he have to give a reason?
Well, I guess he gave lots of reasons. Yeah, I mean, he said he was a Marxist-Leninist and an anti-imperialist, and he said he wanted to trade secrets, give secrets over to the Soviets, which is another reason why it's odd that after defecting to the Soviet Union, 2 years later, he was let back into the United States and allowed to roam around freely, apparently. And the official story during the 1960s. Yes,
his wife was down with the KGB agents. Yeah. Okay. So what do you make of that? Are you suggesting that perhaps it was an intelligence plan, or maybe he was CIA and it was an idea to go over, and it was kind of like a
double agent?
I don't know, like a plot. Yeah. Like, go over there, say you're down with the Marks, and you want to whatever, because we want to feed them some information. Find yourself a hottie, preferably one who has KGB connections, and then, you know, shimmy shake, come back in a couple of years. I mean, do you think that was the...
Yeah, a double agent romance, maybe. It's even harder to figure out Marina Oswald than Lee Harvey, but it's definitely this kind of situation that you would figure that the CIA would be monitoring. And again, the files came out in the 1970s that in fact they were monitoring it, and more files over the years.
Were they is there evidence they were monitoring it, or that he had a handler? Is there any evidence that...
both. And okay. I think one of the points against the Israeli theory, or at least a qualification to it, is that Angleton was not his only, potential handler, person monitoring him. Among the CIA officials, there were other people who appeared to be even more involved with Oswald. In fact, there's one guy named David Atlee Phillips, who it is alleged that he was actually seen in Oswald's company. One of the Cuban exiles who the CIA trained to attack Castro testified to Congress that he saw this top CIA officer, David Atlee Phillips, in Oswald's company in 1963. But to my point, actually, David Atlee Phillips isn't known to have any connections to Israel. So this guy Angleton, he's connected to Oswald and he's connected to Israel. But Atlee Phillips, who appears to have been even closer to Oswald, is not connected to Israel, so far as we know. So that in some ways, that's there's nothing.
Oh, I know.
Sorry.
It just occurred to me that I forgot to bring up one group that gets thrown in the mix, Cuba. That Cuba would that there could be a Cuban connection or interest in JFK going away. But now it seems that if of course there's two types of Cuban interests. Yeah, there's the Miami Cuban interest, and there's the Castro Cuban interest.
Yes, and very suspiciously, Oswald for some reason had connections to both of those, at least as far as Cubans who are in the U.S.
And was one of those people Marco Rubio's grandfather?
Well,
or dad?
Possibly, and also, well, according to Donald Trump, Ted Cruz's
Marco.
Yeah. According to Donald Trump, it was everybody's Ted Cruz's dad. But that hasn't been proven. I'm sure there was some secondhand connections, because those were the kind of circles that Oswald sometimes.
And for listeners who aren't aware of, is that there's the Miami Cubans they don't like the Castro, because these are the people who tended, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when the Cuban Revolution was happening, the bourgeois, or whatever, the people who wanted to get out of there, or from the other regime, or a lot of them fled to Florida and Miami, and that's why you have these most Cubans, as far as I'm aware, who live in the U.S. tend to be they want a strong Cuba policy, because they want the communist, or they want the regime to fall. I guess they think they're going to go back then, it's going to be their Zion moment, and they're going to go back and claim, whatever property they think belongs to them. And then, of course, there's the Cubans in Cuba and the Castro regime, and it's that of course is still under blockade. I think still embargoed from the U.S. So they would want to, if they wanted to get rid of Kennedy because they thought he was going to try to Bay of Pig them again, which didn't make any sense, because based on what the evidence that's there is that he was going to looked like he was going to shift his posture
Policy.
towards Cuba. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
well,
so,
he
but then good.
As part of resolving the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy basically publicly vowed never to invade Cuba, never to authorize
And that
invasion.
would piss off the Miami Cubans, yeah? That
Yeah,
would piss off the Miami Cubans. Wink, wink, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So quite quickly, I just wanted to ask something before we get into if we'll ever if you had to say who killed JFK and why, what that would be with the qualifier that this is just based on what you've read and seen and just your spidey sense, since you are the true conspiracy theory guy, among other things. Yeah, but you're the that's not all Garrett is, but before that, I want to, just because of Luigi. Oh, I said it. Oh crap, I shouldn't have said it. So, people are making, I don't know if, I just think that maybe we have too much time on our hands, but there's people who are making, apparently this sweater that Lee Harvey Oswald was wearing when they kind of paraded him and made it easy for Ruby to shoot him. I mean, crack security at this in Texas, I got to say. I mean, but I guess it was the same color. People are saying it's basically the same color and style of sweater that Luigi was wearing when they perp walked him.
I'm actually not sure.
And so people are making this connection. They're saying like what, like it could just be, a coinkydink, but it's kind of like, because they made a show of parading him. Yeah. A show of making him look kind of badass, being taken into custody or being taken to court, I guess. Yeah. And he was wearing like this dark red sweater and a white shirt. And people are saying, dude, they dressed him like Lee Harvey Oswald. So then people are making like thinking like the people who the puppeteers have a sense of humor. Yeah. They just want to give these little nuggets to us.
Well, there's a whole
like, the artistic director of the CIA is like, you know what? Let's have a throwback. Yeah, let's have a throwback with Luigi. Let's dress him like Lee Harvey Oswald and see what the plebs make of that. I mean, you don't think there's anything to
it? I think we're in sort of like numerology territory here.
Okay, so that's not a conspiracy fact. That's just
it's fashionology. There's astrology, numerology, and there's fashionology.
Well, okay. You might eat those words someday. If he gets let loose and then something like this happens. Okay. So was there any
I'll eat my sweater if that happens.
Yeah. Is there any was there any new insights about these two dudes that we talked about before, at least in the files that were released last month, between Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby, and I think his full name was Rubenstein. He went by Jack Ruby.
Yeah.
And who's Jack Ruby?
What?
I mean, I know, but I want you to tell me.
Jack Ruby is a veteran gangster, veteran underworld figure.
Oh, that's right, the mob.
Okay. Yeah. He goes back to the 20s. He was apparently like an errand boy for Al Capone, and he had lots of connections to Meyer Lansky, who did have lots of connections to who himself had lots of connections to Israel, and actually fled there for a while when the FBI was going after him. And that is one of the more, that is another thing, Israeli element that's in the new documents, is that, well, it doesn't directly name Lansky, but there's more testimony from a Cuban exile, or like a sort of recorded conversation before the assassination, where one of the Cuban exiles is saying something like, we've been out to get that Kennedy son of a bitch for a while, and it looks like we're going to do it because we have the big Jewish money behind us now. And a lot of people say that points directly to Israel. I would say it probably just points to Meyer Lansky, who was definitely connected to Israel, but he was also connected to a lot of other things. He was
okay, but why would killing? So I just want to ask, because you mentioned the big money. Why would killing JFK and Dallas take a lot of money?
Well, I guess training and hush money and all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
God only knows how.
I just asked. It seemed like a lot, because again, it seemed like the question isn't so much who killed JFK, but who didn't want to. So there were so many people. So if there were so many actors or interests that would like to see this guy out, so maybe they wouldn't want to actually be involved in it, but they're not going to. People can.
Well, the money would probably have to be laundered through the mob, right?
But I'm just saying, like, you wouldn't have to pay Dulles. You wouldn't have to pay Dulles for this. I'm just wondering, like.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I would assume, because I never thought, because I was thinking, like, well, who would, how much money would it take? I mean, I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean,
I guess it would have to be off the books. That's true. You couldn't, like, be like,
well, the mob is directly connected to the CIA, particularly in these Castro assassination plots. Both because they were paid off by the CIA and because they used to have huge illegal gambling and prostitution and drug smuggling operations in Cuba before Castro kicked them out.
Okay, and so what you're saying then is that it's more the idea that the CIA gets a certain amount of a budget from the government, but then they're in terms of them being able to, how do they phrase it again? I'm gonna use this all the time now. Sorry. What is it? So if you're gonna accomplish what others cannot accomplish and go where others cannot go, then you need slush funds. You need slush funds. You can't wait for Congress to act. Yeah. So I guess it makes sense that just for no other reason than money, they would have to have some interesting friends.
Yeah, and the whole national crime syndicate, which involved Jews, but obviously wasn't just Jews. It was like plenty of Italians, Santo Trafficante. Sante Trafficante Jr., I believe, was the other big guy who was associated with Lansky and had worked with him in Cuba and worked with him on Castro assassination plots.
And just to fill that in with the mob, isn't it also true that the main mobsters that kind of set up Las Vegas were Jewish? Like Bugsy Siegel was Jewish, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And of course Adelson, but that was a bit later. But the Jewish mafia. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't know how diversified they are. If the mafia is still ethnically, siloed, but it has been part and parcel, especially of not just on the West Coast, but or East. So you have Hollywood, which is which it has, the movie industry is good for money laundering and the mob. East Coast, of course, we know that, but then also Las Vegas. Okay, so that's Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby is the mob connection. Okay, so to wrap up here, based on your, like, if you had to give a scenario, let's drag this out a bit. So let's first start off with who didn't want to kill JFK. So, of all the usual suspects that are put out there, who in your opinion was probably the least likely to have knowledge beforehand that something was going to happen or likely to happen? Names or groups? Yeah.
Well, in the 60s, it was sometimes floated in the mainstream that that naturally, I mean, that Oswald would be a Russian or a Cuban agent because officially, that's who he was connected to, and that's who he was supposed to have been sympathetic to. There are actually some right populists, like the John Birch Society, who tried to promote that idea and said said that was the conspiracy that was being covered up by Johnson. And there were even some less right-wing people who said, "Oh, well, yeah, Johnson was covering that up to prevent World War III." And you don't really find that very plausible because the communists don't want World War III either, and Castro didn't need to kill Kennedy to protect himself because he already apparently had come to an understanding with Kennedy that he wasn't going to, at least not send the military after him anymore. So
basically what you're saying is you don't think that the Soviet Union or Castro in Cuba had an interest in killing JFK.
Yeah, and I don't think the mob and Jimmy Hoffa could do it of their own initiative. Could do it of their own initiative, which was also another mainstream theory that sometimes came up in the 60s and 70s. That was
that with JFK as well? Because I thought it was with Bobby, because Bobby was going after Hoffa, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Okay.
And that was supposed to be part of the motive. Because you couldn't just take out Bobby, you would have to take out JFK as well if you wanted to get away with it. And that was sometimes presented in the mainstream, starting in the 70s, to sort of counter the CIA accusations. And that doesn't seem very plausible because, would Lyndon Johnson protect the mob, and would J. Edgar Hoover and Dulles protect the mob just for if they had committed treason?
Okay, so for those of you following along at home, Garrett has removed from being Cuba, Soviet Union, and the mob in terms of Jimmy Hoffa and all that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the mob certainly
they might have tried for him, but they weren't into this business. Okay.
Well, unless someone wants to prove otherwise, I would assume that the CIA controls the mob and not vice versa.
Yeah. All right. So, who do you think the main? Who do you think, in terms of being directly involved in getting things like the car going slow, not the car, putting the president in a convertible going slow in Dallas?
Yes.
Who was involved in this?
Publicizing the route.
Yeah.
Publicizing the motorcade route.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a turkey shoot. Who was involved in that, you think? Or who would have had to be? Either directly or been like, okay, yeah, we'll just not do this. Negligence through doing something, or negligence through not doing something. Yeah.
It would have had to be people in the federal government. It would have had to be people in the Dallas government. And very, very interestingly, like the mayor of Dallas had a brother who worked for the CIA.
Okay, so so you're saying that yeah, go ahead. So you're saying the CIA, this was a CIA op, you think?
It's not very original.
The call came from inside the house.
It's not very original, but I would say the means, motive, and opportunity. All roads lead to Allen Dulles, as David Talbot sort of portrays in his book. I think you made the right choice in leading with the Devil's Chessboard.
Okay, so in terms of the who, the main guy was was Dulles and his ilk. Yeah. And so the why. Why don't you recap the why for us? Your best hypothesis as of March 30th, 2025. Why?
Well, again, it's not very original, but I mean, I think that the Kennedys were after the Cuban Missile Crisis. We're looking to de-escalate the Cold War in a way that the CIA and the military-industrial complex would not accept. Mm. And there was a coalition of powerful actors in the government that included Dulles and his friends who were still inside the CIA, because officially he was gone, but it's documented that he still had many friends at the CIA who regularly attended meetings over at his house on the weekends. And
as you do.
Yeah. That Dulles and J. Edgar Hoover and the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Pentagon.
Were these fancy dress parties? No, I'm sorry. That's a side note.
Well, with J. Edgar Hoover there, and then there's Clay Shaw. I mean, and I think at least 50% of the stuff in that Oliver Stone movie actually is true. There are worse places you could start than that. But
well, I think Oliver Stone legitimately wants to get at the truth to the extent that you can.
Yeah, and he's made a documentary called JFK Revisited a few years ago. That's quite good. And
it's also my understanding that part of his I think he's just curious. Part of his motivation is he went to Vietnam. Yeah, so he killed people and all that stuff that went on in Vietnam, and the idea that if he has in his head that maybe that wouldn't have happened, or it wouldn't have been so bad if whoever took out these guys and hadn't taken them out. So he also has a personal motivation in addition to just a history buff curiosity director dude. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Lots of big federal actors, deep state, National Security Council, and all of their subsidiaries, like the Cuban exiles, and like Meyer Lansky in the mob, and possibly Mossad was involved as well. But I think that someone like Dulles would have to be at the head of it.
And then that dirty bird gets to be the head of the Warren Commission to investigate the assassination that he probably orchestrated. Allegedly. Oh, he's dead. What's he gonna do? Sue us? We're American citizens. Anyway, let's check the clock. Still have free speech. Maybe tomorrow not. Foreign students first. First they came for students on visas. And anyway, that's a different story. Okay. And so just to wrap this up, and thank you, Garrett. We still have the CIA. Is there any indication that it's gotten less powerful over the years?
No, not really. You could argue that maybe it did, in the 70s when all of these revelations came out or first started to come out about
and you think they would have this is an ugly badge if they can't come up with a better bird. What kind of ugly thing is this? I'm sorry. It's like who likes this shit? Anyway,
they didn't want to look
with all this in mind, our mission is straightforward but critical. Leverage the power of information to keep our nation safe. We have the nation's first line of defense. I love this. I have to say it again. We accomplish what others cannot accomplish and go where others cannot go. As you would expect to have on an agency that's in a democracy of for, by the people, transparency, all that good stuff. Okay, yes. So you don't think there's any indication that the CIA has gotten any I don't know what to say. The ethos has gotten any different. I mean, now because again and I think
they have more girl bosses.
That's right. They got there's a lot of diversity. If you go and check out the CIA website, there's a lot of diversity there. There's that. But the Soviet Union fell.
Although already by the 70s. Already by the 1970s, a third of CIA employees were female, And of course, feminist icon Gloria Steinem was a CIA agent when she was with the National Student
Agent or
Association.
asset? It was asset, wasn't it? Oh, okay, yeah.
No, I think she confirmed that she was an agent. There's a book about it called Patriotic Betrayal, about her career in the CIA.
Not patriarchal, not patriarchal. Sorry, I have a laser focus on the feminists. Anyway, they messed with the wrong lady. So that's a different story. They made me do it. So okay, and so fast forward, it seems that there wasn't anybody who really challenged at least the CIA directly until Trump. Yeah.
Right.
And the Russiagate, you have all this. They didn't, but now he seems to. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, Jimmy Carter and his CIA director did fire a bunch of officers and agents in the late 70s. But
the Nazis? No.
Well,
thanks, guys. We've done all we can from you.
Some of them, yeah, probably, and George Bush Sr. if he counts.
Well.
But they came back in hard. They came back in a big way in the Reagan administration. But yeah, and some people say that's why Carter was a one-term president, is because the CIA found a way to take him out with all this Iranian business and so on. But
yeah, the gas prices, yeah. I remember, yeah, the gas prices went crazy then. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, in between Carter and Trump, yeah, it was a very pro-CIA government.
Mm-hmm. And now it seems that, I don't know, who did he put in charge of the CIA? Kash Patel is FBI, yeah?
Well, Tulsi Gabbard is the director of national intelligence, which is supposed to be...
That's above all of them?
Yeah.
Good Lord. Well, I'm sure
Tulsi Gabbard, who is confirmed to have read a JFK conspiracy book called JFK and the Unspeakable, which is focused very much on the CIA as the author of the assassination.
Okay, so do you think what would have to happen for them to be like, you know what, buy CIA? Because they'll, I mean, how, and to get the American public to realize, given that the press and with Mockingbird, with all this stuff, because there's a lot of, I don't know, to get past the titillating aspect and the Hollywood aspect of these conspiracy theories and realize, like, no, this isn't just entertainment. This is bad for you. This mafia-like, off the books institution. It's all about, they say national security. What it means is, securing the imperial interest overseas, in most cases, to get people to be more concerned about that. Can you see a situation? What would have to happen for there not to be a CIA anymore? Or a greatly reduced one, I should say. Or one that's under the auspices of, the State Department or something. That even makes sense.
Well, I guess for one thing, the Democratic Party would have to stop supporting it, because obviously that's our position on everything. The first thing that has to happen is the Democratic Party got to go. Yeah.
Other than that,
you can't have the head of it, Chuck Schumer, sort of cheering on the CIA to do dirty tricks on Donald Trump, as he did when Trump was first elected.
Well, he even said there's that famous interview where it should be famous. He basically said, like, they have 6 ways of Sunday of getting you. What is he? This is crazy. He's upsetting the wrong people, and it's like, what? Okay, and everyone's like, la la la. Oh yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy. Not that what Schumacher said, that wasn't the problem. No, Trump, like, oh yeah, Doesn't he know who he's messing with?
Well, it's the agencies in the deep state are tied to the empire, so you would have to go all in with this, rolling back of the American empire and ending the wars, including the original Forever War in the Middle East. And that is one Mossad connection that definitely needs to be, investigated more. But it's I think
I heard the CIA.
It's all connected. It's really all about imperialism, I think. I mean, that's where it came from.
And again, imperialism is very material. It's basically about securing America's and our allies access, which means the finance, ruling elites access to cheaper resources, labor flows, and things like oil and rare earth minerals and all of that. It's basically about orchestrating the global economy, the flow of capital, people, and resources to the benefit of the ruling class interests of the people that have, the large scale financial sector and real estate sector and tech sector, and also industrial, but that's quite a bit less than it was before. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't. It definitely implies a communist solution. Although you could also, I suppose, go with the Ron Paul solution. But I don't know if that would work long term. The connection between capitalism.
Well, no, and the reason why the material reason why communists and well, I'd say all communists, but some socialists as well, I would say that the reason why working classes should be interested in what's going on why the we call the core countries, so the countries in the imperial core should see that their interests align with the working class and the poor in the periphery, is because imperialism doesn't benefit the average person or worker in the country. It benefits the bourgeois, the capitalists or whatnot, because they can travel, they can put their capital anywhere in the world that's going to have the greatest yield, and they can do things to suppress wages and control prices and all kinds of things that really don't benefit the average person, and they certainly don't. So that's the common cause, the material connection between why they say workers of the world unite. Yeah.
Well, yes, especially as far as covert operations go, because at least in a war, you put a lot of people to work. Of course, you kill a lot of people, you kill a lot of Americans, but at least you put them to work, like you did in the 50s and 60s. But with the covert operations, you don't even have the industrial aspect of war developing the national economy. And so, we do maybe more covert operations than ever, but we have nothing to show for it, among the prosperity of the U.S. homeland.
Yeah, the only thing that trickles down is the surveillance capacity. It seems the only thing that you want to see that as a benefit. Okay, well, yeah, but even now it seems like there's this hesitancy to, even in the mainstream, to officially acknowledge the fact that Dulles was at the center of this.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, because they don't want to. They think that will. The reason why. So, in terms of Operation Mockingbird still being going, or not even having to be anymore, because the press has become so professionalized that these people come from the same kind of set of backgrounds, and it used to be that most newspaper people and even on TV didn't get master's degrees in journalism. So you think that's why they don't? that it isn't people coming out and saying, well, isn't it quite clear? I mean, it's not a smoking gun, but it seems like the most plausible thing is that Dulles was at the center of that, and he was at the head, and he was the CIA dude, basically in charge of more than anybody else of setting up the CIA. He gets fired by Kennedy. Kennedy gets assassinated, and then he gets appointed by Lyndon Baines Johnson to oversee the investigation. But yet, the mainstream media, for lack of a better word, will not dot that I.
Yeah, well, it could spell the destruction of the CIA, which is a crucial tool of the whole U.S. empire.
But why? They could just say, "Oh, he was a rogue. He was a rogue dude. We didn't."
Well, except he wasn't a rogue.
Know?
I mean, he was.
Well, they could say
the
whatever they want. I mean,
but
he was a disgruntled employee. He was fired.
that's
an alcohol problem, late stage syphilis. They can say anything they want.
I don't know.
So it was Lee Harvey Oswald,
I don't know
the Cubans, and Crazy Dulles. No one knew how crazy he was.
But well, see, that's the thing. I mean, the debate on the left, right? It's supposed to be between conspiracy theorists who are supposed to be secret right wingers. That's what they call us, right? And structuralists who overlap with Marxists. Noam Chomsky says he's not a Marxist, but whatever. He says he's a structural thinker, and because he's a structural thinker, he doesn't care who shot JFK. He said that because it would just be one bad apple or something.
What does it matter? Yeah.
Yeah, but of course. Yeah. The thing is that Alan Dulles was at the heart of the establishment, and if you were to really dig into what he did and why he did it, it would reveal the participation and the motives of the Wall Street and international bankers and the whole national security establishment, and the official connections between the CIA and the mob, which are talked about a little bit in the mainstream, but not much. And as I said, the people who try to say it was the mob and not the CIA, they're very much trying to obfuscate the fact that they're functionally connected.
The mob couldn't function if it wasn't allowed to the degree that it does. Yeah. And so I think there's people who are who again the anarchists and the libertarians and the liberals would all be inclined to want to kind of have the bad actor dude. So although there's some corruption, there was some bad actors, but they don't want to get into how this is baked in the cake and how core these people were, and that the apparatus that they set up has not gone away. It's so normal that it's just kind of subterranean now. It just is. But you realize that that people that didn't just happen; they had to be built, and that these guys in particular and others, going around with recruiting the Nazis, with getting Eisenhower on board, with the interest that they had, were able to make a permanent set of institutions, starting with core around the CIA, that's all about maintaining an imperialistic posture in terms of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Is that
no doubt.
Yeah, and that you can't, and that and it's also the same thing with the mafia, that people be like, okay, yeah, the mafia could pay off someone in the government. Of course, that happens. There could be a dirty cop, a dirty judge, or they get blackmail on somebody. But the idea that it benefits the state, i.e., the state, to have a mob, people don't want to deal with that.
Yeah. I mean, but even with all that, the American people know. I mean, to the point where even conservatives have to come around to it. I mean, I think their version of it is it's limited, and it's arguably self-limited. They actually, with conservatives, they actually tend to go more after Lyndon Johnson than Dulles. But I don't know. I think Dulles is the guy who would have felt he was deeper in the establishment and would have been more confident in initiating something like this.
And I wonder, this is just too nice. I just wonder, like, I just think, like, you know, and another thing that's bad on Dulles, you think that he got, given all the stuff that those guys did, you would think that you would be that they would be have egos enough to want to let people know what they did. Like some are like, hey, check out what we did. I mean,
maybe that's the only reason the files got released.
Not like we killed JFK, but like, look at this. Even like, I don't mean like JFK. They don't have to say that, but like, just, you know, that their legacy, that they'd want, and I guess because Dulles is not a name that drops off everybody's lips. You know, who isn't anybody who isn't interested in the JFK issue.
Well, there's an airport name.
Maybe the Cold War thing.
Well, that's after.
Yeah, but if you ask the average person, tell me about Dulles, what are they going to tell you? Not much.
Yeah, maybe.
You could try it. You're like, who do you know? Like you said, Lee Harvey Oswald, Alan, or, you know, or Dulles, and most people are like, okay, Lee Harvey Oswald probably, because of the movies. But I'm just saying is that I guess he must have been really good at his job, or maybe it was enough for him. But yeah, it's kind of like underappreciated, because if it's true, and you agree, and you seem to think that there's it's an accurate story to make out of the fact that him and his brother, but John Dulles in particular, was uniquely
positioned,
responsible, or positioned to create U.S. foreign policy since World War II that continues on to this day. But yet, you know, there's not a lot on there. And also, maybe because people are, you know, because I remember that Talbot, I know you need to go, but I know that when Glenn Greenwald was interviewing him,
well, I would assume that's
he
why
said that nobody wanted to publish this book, and his book. I'm sorry.
Oh wait, I'm sorry.
Because when the Devil's Chessboard came out, Talbot was saying that he had a hard time finding a publisher for the book, and it wasn't because they thought that he was telling lies. It's because they're like, we don't want to publish this, and then very little media. It didn't start off anything. Yeah, very much. So it's a popular book and it gets read, but again, we get to this problem, and we do this too much, I think, as materialists. We think that if enough people
there's no Netflix miniseries coming.
yeah, not yet. No, but even then, we think we want to think that, well, if enough people know, that in itself will make a difference. But it doesn't. Enough people knowing doesn't make a difference. Yeah. So we do. I mean, you have a lot of people who know. I'm sure most people would be like, okay, it's like it's a mystery what happened in Iraq. Yeah.
I mean, part of the reason people would elect someone like Trump is because they don't trust Washington insiders, and part of the reason they don't is because they believe that the deep state helped kill JFK. So it does have that.
And now Trump is going to dismantle the deep state.
Well, that is the MAGA. The MAGA vision.
How's that? What do you think?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm waiting for the first 100 days, as they say, to make it.
Let him settle in. Let him settle in. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying. I don't want to be full QAnon. I don't want to be full QAnon. Say trust the plan for 5 years. But what?
But you get the point I'm making, is that we kind of can fetishize knowledge. Yeah. So it's like, oh, a big problem is not enough people know X, Y, or Z. And if we can get to a critical point, you know, a quality shift, if we get to a critical point, then people will know, they'll care, and they'll act differently, even if it's just voting differently and holding people to account. But if you have this apparatus where it becomes clear that just voting somebody in there isn't enough, you see what I'm saying? we like to believe, especially anybody who likes, readers and writers and nerds and whatnot, we like to think, oh, just enough people knew, then, great things happen. And I don't, I wonder if that's the case.
Well, obviously organization matters too.
I'm trying to get you to say a certain thing, but you're not going to. It's okay.
Workers of the world unite. What do you
need? A vanguard, baby. You need some sort of structure and
well, yeah, you need a part. You need a working class party that's completely outside the ruling class capitalist establishment. That's the only way it's not going to be corrupted. I think people, the impulse of electing someone like Trump, who seems like he's outside of the Washington establishment, is good, but whether or not it's going to actually accomplish anything very much remains to be seen. I think he has he may have a smaller version of empire in the long term, but not in the short term.
And what do you make of Hoaxeth? What was that pick about? He just liked him? Any idea?
I don't know. Like maybe that it's so belligerent the past 10 years, It's like it's a new Cold War that in some ways is worse than the old Cold War, And it's like maybe facing off with Iran is like less scary and intense than facing off with Russia. and he does I maybe feel still some need to appease the neocons, whatever his long-term view is. Hegseth, I don't know. Christian Parenti referred to him as drunk texting Hegseth on the Signal chat.
Hell yeah. Well, then you have RFK, and I don't want to. I know you're no comment when it comes to RFK Jr. And that's cool, but I was just kind of like, all that talk about Bobby. He'd be like, Bobby, we're gonna release the files, Bobby. We're gonna find out. We're gonna release the files, and then they release the files. Bobby says nothing except for he's gonna make anti-Semitism a health issue. I mean,
yeah.
I'm like, dude, what do they have on you? Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like I cannot imagine, and I know you can't say anything, and I don't know either. I can't imagine why Bobby Kennedy would want to hang out with that schmooly pusspot if he didn't have to. I'm like, really? You're like this with the schmoo? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a great conversationalist. I don't know.
All I can say about that is that it's hard to take on Big Pharma and Israel at the same time.
Yeah, but you don't have to suck their cock. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Sorry. It's okay. Especially when he's brought the anti-Semitism thing into his department.
That's what I mean. I'm just
that's a government-wide thing. But
all right. Sorry, I apologize, audience, for saying that lewdness on Mother's Day. No, that
there's probably like a National Parks Department anti-Semitism rule at this point.
Yeah. Wash your hands, don't feed the bears, and don't be an anti-Semite. Those are the words. So I have something to say before we go. What's going on with you? You have something coming out? You have something coming out in Compact, don't you?
Yeah. The oligarchic roots of DEI should be coming out soon.
Okay. Ooh, Garrett is having an article come out in Compact, and even though they kicked my Nina Power to the curb, I still would want you to read Garrett's article in Compact, the oligarchic roots of DEI.
Yeah. goes into about how, this opposition that the Democrats have now between, the white male Trump, Musk oligarchy and the sort of righteous grassroots, anti-racist DEI movement.
I forgot to ask you, Garrett, how excited are you? Oh, sorry to cue off. Like, screw you, Garrett. No. How excited are you for the AOC, the band getting back together? AOC and Bernie against the oligarchy or fight the oligarchy. They're putting the band back together. They're going to tour. How do you feel about that?
I'm throwing a little bit of shade on that in the article,
Okay.
because Bernie and, these people are still Democrats at the end of the day. And the Democrats, going back to Obama, at least, well, actually beyond Obama, back to Clinton, are like the party of Citigroup, the party of Citibank. And people don't remember, but there was, a WikiLeaks. In the Podesta files, speaking of conspiracies, people are
conspiracy fact.
There's all kinds of sensation about the Podesta files, but the material analysis of the Podesta files, maybe the most important revelation was that the Citigroup executives had picked almost Obama's entire cabinet.
Yeah,
and when you look at the emails, it was a big human resources diversity guy at Citigroup who handled all that, and he was recommending a very diverse cabinet, and he was recommending Hillary Clinton, even though Obama and Clinton had bad blood, and he was explicitly recommending diversity.
Don't give the whole game away, Garrett. You want people to read the article.
Well,
read Garrett's article. Also,
Let me just say that meme folks may have seen about Occupy Wall Street and introduce them to identity politics. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
This like brings receipts for that, basically.
Okay. Ooh.
Like how the criticism that Obama got for bailing out the banks in his first term may be directly related to the way he embraced identity politics.
There you go. Well, anyway, keep an eye out for that. Garrett's the social populist on the Substack, and that's good as well. I subscribe, or I got him to give me a free subscription because he is my non-paid correspondent. And also at Left v Lockdown on X. And the L is capitalized, so at capital L, EFT V lockdown is also with a capital L, I think. But I'll put that in the video description. And I'm gonna plug something. I missed Judy they them Butler, psychotic feminist who thinks that there's nothing essentially a male about the penis. I missed her talk when she came to the country I currently reside. But she's going to be in Italy the end of April, is it? Yes, 30th of April. And so I'm on a tight budget. Morbid Symptoms is fairly new project, so I don't have a travel budget. But if I really want to go and ask Judy Butler a question. So, and I have a friend who's there. And so if you want to help GoFundMe, I need 300 pounds to get me to Verona in end of April. And it's crazy. The train ride from my house to the airport is twice as much as the ticket from here to Verona and back. It's crazy. Anyway, so if you want to help me, help Morbid Symptoms, Tara wants to go to Italy to ask Judith Butler some questions. And that, like, for example, how has her gender performance changed since she shifted from a he, her to a they, them? That's one of them. Has she ever tried a girl dick? What are things like this? I have several questions depending on her talk. If you're interested, I will do an article on it, and I will film stuff along the way. And if I can record anything, and if I get to the enchilada, get to ask my question. It will be something on morbid symptoms. So if you have anything to help me out, you can go to GoFundMe. I have, that's cool. Or you can buy me a coffee. All the money that goes to that will go towards, hopefully, if I get 300 pounds, I will go to Verona. I will sign up. I have someone who can get me into that conference. I'm going to ask Judy about a question. I'm going to, make some sort of morbid symptoms podcast Substack out of it. I know times are tough, but if that appeals to you, please do help me out. All right. Anything else you want to say about anything, Garrett? I've had a good time. It's nice seeing you again.
Same here. I'm looking forward to that project. You can call it Judy and Me. It's like
Judy and Me. Yeah, Judy and Tara. I have some questions for Judy.
I think it'll be just as hard to pin down Judy as it was to pin down Roger in that.
Yeah, Roger and me. Yeah, and then I'll have to read Gender Trouble. I'm gonna have to go in, but I have some questions for Judy. So if you want to help get Tara to Verona, just for a couple. I'm just collecting. If I get enough money for the train and the plane, there's someone there I can shack up with and eat pasta and bread. I don't know what I'll be doing. Anyway, it'll be. I mean, come on. I try to bring it. Maybe I get arrested. Also bonus. Anyway, for misgendering, I don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen, people. All right. Please do like and subscribe. Thank you, Garrett. I look forward to our next interaction. You will always be my Edard. All right. I'll let you go. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks again, Tara.
Why, thank you. All right. Okay. So that was Garrett Ramirez. To check him out on the Social Populist Substack. I will put his details in the video description. If you follow me on X Twitter, I also have his account handle in the tweet for this post. Again, if you would like to help me go to Italy to ask Judy Butler a question, you can help me do that. What is this? Something you scan and it buys me a coffee. This is the one for GoFundMe. It says Tara wants to go to Italy to ask Judith Butler a question. I have several questions. And here's the ad, so I'm not just making it up. 30th of April. Anyway, thank you very much. I see we have some comments, but I can't get to them because I have to wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in. Those who please do like, subscribe. Also check out the Substack. I'm writing on there more, which is why I was a bit last couple of weeks. I didn't have many podcasts, but I miss doing them. Catch you later, and I'm going to lead this up while I put music on to exit. So Tara wants to go to Italy to ask Judith Butler a question. More than one. If you can help me do that, that's great. If people donate and I don't make enough, I'll give them the option if they want. I don't know what I'll do, if I can send it back or buy a better camera or green screen. Who knows? But we'll do something, people. But I really want to go to Italy and ask Judith Butler a question. On that note, I'm going to start some music, I think. Let's see. What do we want to end on? Something lively. Yeah? All right. Thanks, everybody.